Greetings, Legionnaires. Wanted to check in here and give you a little review in progress on Darksiders 3. Now, if you're new here, one thing you got to know about me, I love Darksiders. I really enjoyed the first one, really loved the second one. Oh my goodness, I think about it a lot. And guess what? I've been waiting for this game for a heck of a long time. Never thought I was actually going to see it, but now, here we are. Darksiders 3. Definitely different than the original kind of intention for Darksiders 3, but that's okay. Maybe when we get to Darksiders 5, we'll have all 4 horsemen. Anyway, basically, if you don't know what Darksiders is, you play as one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And on this outing, we're playing as Fury. Fury and Rampage, her horse. So those are the two here. It's a little different than maybe the ones you might know, which are usually like War and Death, which are still the same, but it's sometimes Pestilence and Famine, but instead here we have Fury and Strife. So there you go, you're caught up. But basically, you play as Fury, who is one of these 4 very powerful beings known as the Nephilim, the unholy abomination kind of creation, the mixing of angelic and demon blood. So yeah, that's basically who you're playing as. And the 4 horsemen a long time ago decided to help this group called the Charred Council and basically wipe out their own race of Nephilim, because the Nephilim were basically going across all the universe, destroying everything. So in kind of exchange for keeping the balance and for, taking out their brethren, the 4 got a ton of power and slaughtered them all. So now you're playing as Fury. Now where does this fall in the timeline of Darksiders 1 and 2? So Darksiders 2 kind of falls, there's a big jump in Darksiders 1 from the beginning of that game to the end of that game. So Darksiders 2 kind of falls in between there, and this one does as well. Basically, in that first one, War has been accused for starting the apocalypse early, and actually you see him in chains near the beginning of this game. Sorry, there'll be some slight spoilers here. But basically, you're playing as Fury. You're getting sent to Earth to take out the 7 deadly sins, which are these kind of creepy beings who have kind of taken over while humanity has fallen to the wayside and is dying. So yes, Fury, definitely different than the other 2 horsemen we played before. Their main weapon here is a whip, which I've been told, Castlevania. A lot of people are like, oh, Castlevania for sure, but I always think like Ratchet and Clank, but not too many whips, or maybe Catwoman in the Arkham games. But definitely an interesting weapon, and the thing that's special about this one is that you actually kind of enter somewhat of a working relationship with this this kind of underworld guy who's been giving you these different abilities to change how your whip functions. So I've defeated a few of the sins, and because of that I've been given some different abilities. First one I got was basically changed my whip into some nunchucks, which were fire-based, which allowed me to not only use that kind of damage in combat, but also allowed me to take out cobwebs and other things like that. So think very Metroid, very Castlevania, where I can't get in this room right now, but if I come back in like 2 hours, I'll have something that will allow me to do that. The one that I really dig right now, I got it after defeating Greed, was Lightning. And besides having the ability to kind of jump in different ways with the fire one, you can kind of do like a boost up and kind of rain fire down. And Lightning, you kind of can float. You can jump and you can float like Storm would from X-Men. But you get a spear instead, and I really like the spear. I always like spears in games. It doesn't have much longer of a reach. The whip is kind of the one that has a little more reach, not even that much, but something to keep in mind. So you're kind of mixing and matching all these things, and while you're doing that, you level up. It's a little bit more basic than it was in 2. 2 had these loot drops that you were kind of moving forward with. This is a lot more like 1, where you're kind of powering up your specific weapons and your character, which this one is mostly just health, strength, and then Arcane. Arcane is for your evade counters, which we'll get to in a bit, and some of your other kind of magical-based attacks, like your Wrath attacks, which I'd kind of forgotten were there, to be honest with you. Your strength, basically for X, at least I'm playing on Xbox, that's your whip attack, and then Y is whatever equipped magic item you have on, so for the fire, it's your nunchucks, and then the lightning, again, the spear, respectively. And yeah, and then health, pretty much straightforward there. There's some pretty light equipment stuff that you can do here as far as like equipping different gems and artifacts, or different, whatever they're called, slotted items to make your weapons a little bit stronger, give you some benefits there too. A few changes you'll probably notice here if you follow the Darksiders franchise as long as I have too. A lot less enemies on screen, a little more of a pulled in camera, and definitely more challenging combat. This one is not like take on 6 or 7 guys at the same time all the time. This is very much a lot more like one-on-ones, two-on-ones, more often than not. And the bosses are kind of the same way, where it's not the same as it was in the past. I usually play these games for more of a power fantasy, and this is definitely not that. Fury does feel pretty weak by comparison to both War and Death, but this is definitely, I think it's definitely, you know, on purpose. It's on purpose for sure. This is what they wanted to do. This is deliberate. So keep that in mind. And another thing that kind of shows that off too is the Nephilim's Respite. It's a healing item that replenishes. If you kill certain enemies, you have a chance always to drop health. So from any enemy, I guess, you can kill them, and there's a percentage to drop some of this health, and then it will replenish this. So it's kind of like a potion that kind of fills back up. And we'll come back around to that later, too, because you'll start to see what I'm talking about here. You'll start to think, oh, yeah, I kind of recognize this from something else, and that, too, and that, and that, and that. So, yeah, but basically so far I have defeated 3 of the sins. I've defeated the very first one, which is Envy, which I really enjoyed. And I gotta say this too, all the character designs are really, really good. That's something I've always loved about these games, is that they have these characters that really pop off the screen, and they do look very comic booky. Even though this world is a little more photorealistic, or tries to be, so it's not as kind of colorful, especially as 2, because Darksiders 2, you're kind of all over the universe and all the realms, and you didn't have to adhere to any distinct structural, architectural thing. But yeah, Envy, Crow Humanoid, kind of the first thing you fight in the game. Kind of a fun little fight, interesting. Greed, you know, it's kind of fun because you kind of have to take him out because he's jumping up on these big kind of areas with these, like he's throwing kind of gold and things at you and different trinkets, and then he gets a refrigerator and throws stuff. And then Sloth, which a lot of people probably saw in some of the footage they released early, kind of a big bug that you have to take out his minions and then take him out. So yeah, but pretty frustrating, some of these fights. They're a lot harder than what I'm used to, even on the balanced difficulty, which is kind of like the normal setting for the game. So, something to consider here. Yeah, my point basically is this. If you liked Darksiders in the past, I'm not sure I can recommend this to you. This is definitely different. It's nice to be back in this world. It's great to see the old Merchant Vulgrim. It's cool to see Charred Council, see War for a second. The new Sins look pretty cool. I saw Pride for a hot minute, which I was like, oh, cool, that's definitely got to be Pride. Like, you see some of these guys before they name them, and you're like, yep, I know that one. And you do have an accomplice, kind of the Watcher. If you guys remember from the first game, Mark Hamill voiced the Watcher, kind of like your master, as it were. But this one is much more, it sucks up to you a lot more. But yeah, kind of interesting. But Fury herself, I would say, is the leading piece, or kind of the core tenet of this game, which is good because she actually has a much more fleshed out character, talks a lot more than War and probably Death, and you get to know a little bit more about her. And I think she's acted very well, and I really enjoy kind of hearing what she has to say. That being said, this is Dark Souls. This is incredibly Dark Souls. I was playing it today, and I've kind of seen this pop up here and there on the internet as well, but this game is so blatantly a ripoff, and not that Darksiders has ever not been a ripoff, because back in the day it was very much like Zelda meets Devil May Cry, but now they've kind of even stepped that back a little bit, so it's got some very minor puzzle solving here and there, but the Dark Souls like combat, where, like I said, it's 1-on-1, 2-on-1, high damage. You're using this health, potion thing that you get back over time. Instead of bonfires, you just kind of respawn where Vulgrim is, so it's not as debilitating, but you also can go back and collect your souls, as it were, but these kind of like lurcher souls that you use to feed the Merchant Vulgrim to level up these like core stats. So very much like Dark Souls. So if you enjoy the Dark Souls series or Bloodborne or something like that, I can recommend that there. But if you like Darksiders like I do, and kind of the older, kind of more, like I said, power fantasy style, where you feel like, even though you're weak in the beginning, you do feel like you've got one up on everybody, especially in a combat sense, then I would go for that. The combat does feel good, and like I said before, these evade counters, which you're very dependent on because you have to dodge at the right time. It slows down. You can get a few hits in, or you can get a stronger attack in. Basically is the kind of the point of that. And for some of these boss fights, they basically are saying like you have to do this. So definitely a different style of Darksiders that I was not expecting. And the more I play it, and the moments I get frustrated, I really think, okay, you know what? I see what they're trying to do, and I know they're trying to appeal to a lot more people because Dark Souls is a big thing, and people really love that, and that probably helped decide for them where to take this specific character. Yeah. Let's see. Besides that, though, I do enjoy the music. The world looks pretty good. There have been a lot of troubling issues, though, on a technical side. A lot of loading, and not just loading screens, but when you're running through the environment. Dragon Quest XI had the same problem from time to time, but if you try to run through environments, like you're trying to get back to a boss, you're just trying to avoid all the enemies, there will be times where the game will just stop, and you'll just be standing there, and you'll be frozen for like a few seconds, and then you can keep going. And then sometimes that'll happen even again, and it is incredibly frustrating because Fury looks so cool, and her armor looks cool, her hair always changes depending on the magic you're using, or it's just the kind of red flowing hair when it's not. And you're like, oh, I guess I can look at all this stuff for a second, but it just is not good. It is really sad. It's like, I don't know why this is such a problem. But the respawning enemies thing, that is there. So yeah, very, very much Dark Souls, and it is really depressing to me because I'm not a huge Souls fan. I beat Bloodborne, but I did it begrudgingly, and I've never really enjoyed those games. I've always felt like they're too intense for me personally. I've never really enjoyed feeling that stressed out. I like to have a bit of a challenge, but again, I like to play games where I don't feel like I'm the character in the game. Like, it's like if I took a hit from this guy, yeah, I'd be dead in 2 hits, but I'm playing as Nephilim, like this really powerful being, and she isn't even, you know, weakened in the beginning. Most of these games have you play as one of the horsemen, or in other games that you might know where you're like strong at the beginning, but then you lose all your powers and you have to get them all back. But that is not the case here. We're getting new powers that we've never really had before. So, kind of interesting. I'm going to beat it, and I feel like I'm more than halfway done with it already, which is good, because I kind of want to beat it and just kind of move on, and hoping that when they make Darksiders 4, which will probably be Strife, we'll see how well this game sells. But yeah, I will probably do a review kind of similar to how I did Dragon Quest XI, where I just kind of sit down and spill all my guts on this. But I wanted to just touch base with you guys. Again, pros, I enjoy the character design. The voice acting is pretty good all around. The world is interesting. The combat is good at times, and the music is nice as well. But at the same time, the combat to me is Souls-like, so I'm not a huge fan of that, where it's a lot of just like time the dodge and then hit twice and then back up and dodge again and heal. And it has a lot of technical issues, and to me, besides just the loading, you lose what made it Darksiders in the first place when you're trying to just be this other thing entirely. And like I said, Darksiders has always had kind of an identity crisis when it comes to actual gameplay, but that Devil May Cry gameplay, which if you heard me talk about earlier, it's a little more over the top, a little crazier, a little more fun. You're kind of juggling enemies, and you can take on a lot more people at the same time. But that is not the case here. If you're taking on like 6 or 7 even ghouls or skeletons or whatever, you're trying to back up, you're trying to manage with your whip, and sometimes you are locked into animations and you just can't dodge out of the way at the right time, and you just, it's so aggravating. Yeah, and it's not as responsive as some of these other games. So yeah, it really does bum me out a lot, because I was really looking forward to this one. So hopefully, when it comes around to 5, because I would hate to play this game and play as like War or Death in this way, because I would, oh my gosh, to limit Death's movement or limit War's ability to like block and just like smash into people would be really sad. So yeah, there you go, everybody. I hope that made some sense to you. Please, if you're playing Darksiders 3, let me know what you think of it so far, or if you're not playing it, what you've seen, and if you enjoyed, or if you're kind of like, oh, I like this direction, or I don't like this direction, or, you know, however you're feeling. Because I just want to know if I'm alone on this. I could be. I want to know Darksiders fans out there, what they think of it. Either way, thank you so much for stopping by. If you want to support the channel, consider liking this video. You can subscribe to us if you enjoy us a lot. You can buy some merchandise over on our Spreadshirt if you really, really want to support us. Then head over to patreon.com/criticalreviews. Even throwing in $1 or just sharing us with a friend over there, that really does help a lot. Either way, thank you guys so much for stopping by. It'll be a little while before I can sit down and do all of this, but hopefully I can beat this game in the next week and a half or so, and then report back in. But thank you once again for stopping by. My name is Jimmy, and just remember to adapt and overcome. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.